What is up, Whisper Nation? It's Friday, April 9th, and today we're talking about those second-year wide receivers. We're going to tell you where you should be taking them, where we're kind of ranking them in amongst themselves right here on the Fantasy Whispers.
Right here.
What's up, Johnny? We're here, man. We're doing it. We're doing second-year wide receivers, as Johnny just said. But if you are hearing my voice or seeing my beautiful mug, yes, it is beautiful, and you are blessed. But do us a huge favor and hit that like button and share this on whatever platform you're on. It really helps with the algorithms and help us grow our channel. Algorithms are the compass by which we steer our ship. So please help us avoid sinking like the Titanic and share this video. If you are new to the Fantasy Whispers, welcome. Please consider hitting us up with a follow or a subscribe. We release fantasy football content daily. You can find us and our past shows on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Spotify. Just search the Fantasy Whispers or go to thefantasywhispers.com. We have all the links and everything there. Johnny, we're doing it. We're talking second-year wide receivers, as we talked about at the top of the show here. We did second-year running backs on Wednesday. We thought it was only right to talk about some of these studs, second-year wide receivers, and some of the guys that didn't really wow us in year one, but have some promise coming into this year. Similar to the way we started Wednesday, we're going to start with a little bit of Would You Rather, Johnny. So I'm actually going to ask you this time the Would You Rathers.
Wow, yeah. Dude, unreal. You're gonna pull this on me now, dude. I had no time. I was giggling making these.
And I thought you thought you were gonna pull it on me. This is the old switcheroo. So Johnny,
Whisper Nation, do you see what I have to go through right now? I did this on purpose. I made these so difficult, and now, oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. Let's go.
Well, before you do, we've got people joining in. We want to say thank you to all those people, including Darius Rice, who says Whisper Nation strong. He's got your back, Johnny. He's going to help you out with these Would You Rathers. Well, let's start it off. We're going to go Justin Jefferson or the man that Justin Jefferson was replacing, Stephon Diggs, Johnny.
This is unbelievable. I'm going to go Stephon Diggs here. I do like Justin Jefferson a lot, but I do think, we could be a little premature. It could be, not saying we are. We'll talk about it in just a second. But Stephon Diggs, I'm no longer doubting him. I mean, I was a believer before. I doubted him last year.
Here we go. Now you're a believer.
Go check the tape. Go check the tape.
I wish we had it right now queued up, but unfortunately you lost it, right? Yeah,
no. I said last year I was off of his boat, but after last year I no longer question it. I'm back on Stephon Diggs. So Stephon Diggs.
Here's a guy I like a lot. That's T. Higgins. Would you take T. Higgins or Robert Woods, Johnny? I think the clear answer here is probably Bobby Trees, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about T. Higgins and his potential upside for next season, and it is really, really tantalizing. And I do think that T. Higgins could be a guy that, majorly takes a step into that top 12 wide receiver class. But you know me, Travi, you know how I like to play the game. I like to go with the more consistent guy that has that higher floor, but can also give me a pretty solid ceiling. And Robert Woods, I mean, he's been a wide receiver 2 or better, top 15 wide receiver 3 straight years. So give me Bobby Trees.
Whisper Nation, remember, you can be answering these questions that I'm pitching at Johnny and talking to us the whole way through. Make sure you're commenting here. Darius Rice saying Diggs with Allen over Jets. I think he was meaning Jefferson there with Cousins. I think that's the right call. But Darius also saying here, my favorite second-year wide receiver is CeeDee. He would have been the number 1 rookie wide receiver if Dak didn't get hurt. So let's start there. CeeDee Lamb or DJ Chark, Johnny. These are two of your favorites.
Yeah, these are both boys of mine. But CeeDee Lamb is him and I go way back, Travi. We go way, way back. So give me that CeeDee Lamb. That dude's a beast.
We've got Brandon Aiyuk or Tyler Boyd next.
This might not be a popular pick here. I know a lot of people do like Tyler Boyd. More specifically, this was geared towards Big Travi, this question, because I do know Big Travi loves Tyler Boyd. I do know the fantasy community loves Tyler Boyd. But give me Brandon Aiyuk. I think that this next year could be a big breakout year for him and an offense, depending on who they get at quarterback and that kind of situation. But I just feel like Brandon Ayuk's ceiling is a little bit more, and I'm willing to take that gamble.
I think that's the perfect breakdown there with Aiyuk. Aiyuk, you're buying ceiling. And then on the other side, you're buying floor with Tyler Boyd. So I think that was the right call. Chase Claypool or Michael Gallup, Johnny?
When I originally wrote this down, I was like, give me Michael Gallup. But after doing research, I'm kind of coming around on Chase Claypool. So I would do Chase Claypool over Michael Gallup.
I do not blame you there. Jerry Jeudy or Will Fuller?
This one, Jerry Jeudy's a little bit of a head scratcher to me. We'll talk about him in a little bit later in the show, but I think I'm going to go with Will Fuller. I'm going to double down on Will Fuller's production last year. I'm going to say it wasn't a fluke as far as, him staying healthy. I think he will stay healthy again down in Florida, and I think he'll be very, very beneficial to people who take him.
Jalen Reagor or Corey Davis?
This one's difficult because Corey Davis is my boy. I do like Corey Davis, and goes to the Jets. He's going to be the alpha dog there, and you know how much I like Zach Wilson, so that'll be looking like a lot of targets could go Corey Davis's way. Jalen Reagor, we also know I'm a fan of Jalen Reagor, but in this kind of situation, I like to go with the number one dogs over guys that could potentially be, the wide receiver 2 for their team. And so give me Corey Davis, but it's real close. I do like the upside of Reagor, but Corey Davis.
So we had 7 questions, Johnny. Of those 7, you answered with 3 second-year guys. We'll see how this breaks down later. Maybe you change your mind. Want to thank everybody in here. If you're new to the channel, hit like, hit subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Let us know what's going on. And I just want to flash up here. Jacob Blay saying, what's up, number 1 fan? Jacob in the house. We're going to start with these second-year wide receivers. These were the rookies that came in. We're going to start with Justin Jefferson. Johnny, there were wide receivers with 7 games of 100-plus yards in their rookie season. There's only been 2 since 1960. One was OBJ. The other was Justin Jefferson. So we've talked in the past about how Justin Jefferson was playing at an elite level, did get elite stats, graded with PFF as an elite wide receiver. He's scored a 76.4 success rate versus man coverage in reception perception. And 2014 Beckham is the only rookie season that was scored higher in the reception perception. Johnny, Justin Jefferson really burst onto the scene here as a guy that is somebody that's, you talked about tantalizing. Upside for Jefferson is through the roof at this point.
Yeah, and what makes it even more higher is the FOMO, right? The FOMO of the people who didn't get him last year. If they didn't take the stab at him later in drafts, and then they weren't able to scoop him up off of waivers, everyone saw this awesome rookie, break all these records. It will be interesting to see if he can repeat this because we just saw how successful his rookie season was, and he even got off a little bit to a struggle, Travis. But as far as Justin Jefferson goes, I think the price that you're getting him in drafts is actually pretty nice, right? I don't think you're overpaying, but I don't think you're underpaying for it. And I think that he is definitely here to stay. I think that with Adam Thielen getting older and older and already being 31, 32 years old, I think it's going to be a nice segue for Justin Jefferson. So he could definitely take over that alpha number 1 position from Adam Thielen and definitely continue with that. So
it'll be an interesting case and we'll discuss this more as the offseason progresses, of where we need to rank Adam Thielen and compare to Justin Jefferson, if we still feel both can eat in this offense, and what we feel is the right thing to do, because we're going to have to pay a premium for Justin Jefferson, all based on upside alone. And he did it, but still it's some things we got to look at. Johnny, I want to give you the mic here for CeeDee Lamb, the next guy on our list, one of another guy that came out of last year's draft class that was just uber talented, and then started to flash some things down the stretch, even in an offense that was missing Dak Prescott. But now we're talking about this offense. We were talking off air. Jerry Jones may be interested in Kyle Pitts. This offense continues to be one that just wants to throw the football a ton. You got to be excited about CeeDee Lamb coming into this year.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's almost as if, because we're like, you and I were talking about like, hey, they need to go out and get some defense, like that defense is non-existent right now, right? But if you look at what Dak was doing, he was beating offenses or beating defenses by himself with their offense. And so maybe their whole thing is like, well, we need a lot of defensive players and we can't necessarily address all of those. But we can get one player on offense, and we already know what our offense looked like before. And then you're going to get and put in a like he says, tantalizing talent in Kyle Pitts, definitely would be exciting. And I would probably adjust CeeDee Lamb in my rankings just a little bit if that did happen, because you got to figure he would be heavily involved in this offense. But before we get there, let's just take a look at what CeeDee Lamb is or what he did last year and whether or not where you should be getting him, right? So he finished as the wide receiver 20 in standard league and wide receiver 22 in PPR leagues. He only saw 11 red zone targets, 13.4%, which is pretty low. He converted 6 of those for touchdowns, so that's pretty significant. Despite having an instability at the quarterback position, because we know Dak, of course, got injured, and then there was like the carousel before they got, they went to Dalton, then he got injured, blah, blah. You know the story. He still ended up having 877 receiving yards from the slot, which is the most by any rookie since 2006. We are excited about those targets. Why? Because slot when he plays in the slot, he's an alpha wide receiver, and now you're putting him in the slot. That creates a lot of mismatches, and they take advantage of that, right? You saw it early in with Dak. 39 targets last year in the first 5 games, 29 receptions for 433 yards with Dak on the field. He was the wide receiver 11, and then he went down and then he slipped, but he still ended up finishing, like we said, as the wide receiver 20 to 22, depending on what type of league you're in. Travis, he's coming off the board around the wide receiver 27, which screams value to me. So to me, CeeDee Lamb is the number one target that I like as far as these second-year wide receivers, just because the cost is so low right now. And
Darius here asking which current second-year wide receiver can outperform their current ADP, and I think CeeDee Lamb is one of the guys you're looking at as a big opportunity to do that, just because we've seen Amari Cooper be inconsistent in the past. Not saying he was last year. I thought he had one of his best years last year, to be honest. With
He did, statistically.
But I think that there is a case where CeeDee Lamb's talent just is so good that we're going to see it outshine. And this offense could continue to be one that feeds a lot of wide receivers. But I'd rather take the upside of CeeDee Lamb in the 5th round than take Amari Cooper around earlier. And I could go for the upside of a guy who can finish within the top 12. And I just don't know if Amari Cooper is going to get there again this year. So we'll see on that.
I mean, and that's the thing is, like, CeeDee Lamb isn't even like in the high end. Yeah, he would probably go in the 5th round, but in a lot of our mocks, Travis, he's been going in the 7th, and
I was just looking at a mock we did for PPR. He was in the 5th round there, early 5th round in a mock there. But I mean, we'll see how that fluctuates for sure. Jacob Blay coming in here says T. Higgins will be the main guy in Cincinnati, and that is a perfect segue for T. Higgins, who finished as the wide receiver 28 in both PPR and standard. He averaged 13 fantasy points per game as a rookie. AJ Green no longer with the team. That's 104 vacated targets, 18.6% of the target market share. So if we look at weeks 2 through 10, pre-Burrow injury, you saw T. Higgins get 18.2%. Weeks 12 through 16, when he started to heat up, 24%. He became the main guy. They kind of brought AJ Green back down to earth. Plus, they realized they were moving on from AJ Green. There was no need to feed him the rock. T. Higgins was a guy who went and worked with Joe Burrow last offseason, made sure he was on page with him chemistry-wise. He's a big body guy. They'll use him a lot in the red zone. He's replacing that AJ Green role, I believe, for them. So the touchdown upside alone will be there. Plus, we're looking at 24, maybe 25% of the team's target market share. I love T. Higgins' output as maybe the guy next in line behind CeeDee Lamb to outperform his ADP, because right now he's going similarly in that 4th, late 4th, early 5th in PPR leagues like we talked about. And he for sure has less in his way to target market share than CeeDee Lamb does.
Yeah, I mean, look at his air yards, 1,262 air yards, Travis. So did he, in his rookie year, get over 1,000 yards receiving? No, he didn't. But generally, rookie wide receivers don't do that. But you look at the air yards, like they were going to him, and that was with the major piece. It was with AJ Green there, right? Now there are a lot of rumors, and maybe this will adjust after the draft and seeing, because a lot of people are projecting Jamar Chase to go to Cincinnati. We know Joe Burrow is heavily pushing Chase to go there. A lot of analysts are saying, no, you got to protect Joe Burrow, especially because he just got an ACL injury. And so they're saying go with the best offensive lineman. We'll see what they end up doing. This is a definite stacked wide receiver class for these rookies coming in, the wide receivers. And so it'll be interesting. They could, go later in the draft for another wide receiver, but I think they have, like, Jacob Lay said, like T. Higgins is an alpha dog. He was an alpha when he played for Clemson. They drafted him to be that. He has shown that he can be that. And now you're taking away AJ Green, who was, the alpha there, who, didn't really want to be there, but they were kind of forcing him to be it. I think this is a year where T. Higgins takes a major, major jump. I really like T. Higgins. And like you said, for one of those guys that you're going to bet on making one of the bigger jumps from his ADP, T. Higgins is definitely one of those guys I'm going to bet on.
One guy that we're having trouble betting on is Jerry Jeudy. It's just a situation where he came in super talented, very touted. 113 targets though last year. That's really good. I mean, that was 21st among wide receivers. But he only caught 52 of those balls. That's 46% catch rate. That was 43rd in the NFL. So this is a guy who was touted as great hands, could catch anything, was super good. I remember some of the videos coming out of his training, Johnny, was him just catching everything. And then we see him go and get 52 receptions, only 856 yards, and only 3 touchdowns. Some of that could be put on the dumpster fire at the quarterback position that Denver put out there. We'll see what they end up doing with the draft, what they end up doing with Drew Lock. Should any trades or anything else happen, who knows? I mean, they could be in the market for Teddy Bridgewater now, actually just thinking about it a little bit. But I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just saying there's things that are revolving there. And so that is the hard part with Jerry Jeudy is I can't project what success he's going to have because of the quarterback position. And then he hasn't really proved that he can do it without the quarterback just on his own. And a guy who has proved he could do it on his own is coming back into the lineup this year, and that's Cortland Sutton. So there's a lot of things kind of working against Jerry Jeudy. The pie's not big enough in this offense. Don't think it's going to be successful enough for you to really want to go into. The only thing going for Jerry Jeudy is great ADP. He, like right now, late 7th, early 8th in PPR, worth a shot to kind of take if you need wide receiver depth. This is a guy, if he gets his catch rate up, is probably, 1,200 yards receiving, and then that's something you want in PPR, especially if you're getting targeted 113 to 125 times in the 8th round. So for me, Jeudy has some upside based on his ADP, but other than that, he's not a guy who's going to blow the ceiling off.
I think you said it really well there, and it's a kind of a point where we don't talk about a whole lot on this show, and maybe we should bring it up a little bit more. But like if you're in a keeper league, specifically where it's like a round keeper league, right? Where the next year you keep them around above and so on and so forth. I think Jerry Jeudy becomes more interesting in that kind of situation, right? Because maybe you can kind of start playing a little bit down the field, because I think Jerry Jeudy next year, not this year coming up, not 2021, I don't know if he makes a monster jump because of the quarterback situation and thing. And Cortland Sutton is coming back. He is the alpha there. And so that's the major difference between a lot of these guys, is that these other guys that are second years are projecting to be, an alpha or a dominant, you could say CeeDee Lamb isn't the number one there, but his targets kind of dictate that, like, he still can put up monster numbers. Jerry Jeudy, he's getting some targets, but they're really, really, really inconsistent. CeeDee Lamb's getting his targets from Dak Prescott, whereas Jerry Jeudy is right now getting his targets from Drew Lock, and we saw how inconsistent Drew Lock is. So I think I'm more likely to gamble on Jerry Jeudy if I'm in like a keeper league or something like that than I will have him probably in a redraft league, just because I feel like it's going to be a lot more matchup based like he was his rookie year.
I love what you said there. I think Jerry Jeudy is the long game. I think this is a guy that's probably going to have a great successful career in the NFL, but it's going to take him a little while.
Are you trading for him then? Right now?
In Dynasty, I would look at him. Yeah, I think if you could get him for cheap, a lot cheaper than you got him last year. He was a first-round pick in Dynasty last year. So I think you could get him, for a discount, especially if you're buying Cortland Sutton coming back and taking away from him, you could kind of sell that. So Darius Rice up here, just the perfect man to segue us. Jacob and Darius segueing us so well. Says Brandon Aiyuk could be a sleeper. Only 66% of snap shares, 96 targets, 60 receptions. Love that you're doing the research for us there, Darius Rice. But let's talk a little bit about Brandon Aiyuk from week 7 through 15 in games that he played. He missed some, obviously, because of COVID and the COVID list. He averaged 11.5 targets, 7.5 catches, 94 receiving yards, and he scored 4 touchdowns. He averaged 17 half-point PPR points per game in that span. The problem is the question isn't Brandon Aiyuk, is he good? Like, we know Brandon Ayuk's good. The problem is that just a year ago we were talking about another rookie wide receiver in this offense that was really good and talented. And so now we're going to have a situation where we need to understand the biggest question mark is, how do these guys coexist? And speaking of Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk. So I wanted to break down some of the games that these guys played together in games, and there was 5 of them. In games where both Samuel and Aiyuk played, Aiyuk had 3 games with double-digit fantasy points. That's in half-point PPR scoring. He had 30 targets, 23 receptions, 284 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Samuel, in 2 games, he had double-digit points in half-point PPR, but he had 35 targets, 27 catches, 318 yards, and also 2 touchdowns. So more yardage, more catches, more targets. He definitely seems to be the guy that this offense wants as the X, but it doesn't mean, in my opinion, that both guys can't coexist in this offense, Johnny. I think both guys are going to be okay. It'll really be about where you project them, and we'll get into this as the offseason rolls on. We'll start projecting our numbers for the offense based on plays ran, based on the quarterback that comes in, and the offensive line changes and whatnot, and running back. But for me, I think Aiyuk is a guy to keep an eye on. Watch his ADP. He's going to be very sneaky. As long as you don't have to pay the price of T. Higgins or of a CeeDee Lamb or a Terry McLaurin, if you could pay a little bit later, you're liking Aiyuk, because that means he could actually eventually take over as the one for that team. But I don't want to have to pay for him as the one for that team right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because frankly, we don't know for sure, right? They haven't played in an expanded role, and we know how much they love Deebo Samuel because he's a yak monster. And I'm not saying that Brandon Aiyuk isn't, because he is. That's why they drafted him. But these two, and I'm not saying they can't coexist together, depending on
of in the heyday the Rams with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp.
Yes.
Now, I think these are different wide receivers. They definitely both could be more similar than those 2 receivers in LA were, but I think these 2 can coexist in that similar fashion where both are probably a lock to be wide receiver 15 to 20s, but one of them has a chance to really be the guy, like Cooper Kupp hit into the top 5 that one year, Is there a shot for one of these guys to be a top 12, top 10 wide receiver?
And I think and what you're talking about, and what's so great is with those guys, though, all of them you had to take at a significant higher draft capital than what you're having to take these guys. And that's what's so great is they are kind of keeping each other down low in the 8, 9, 10 round area. And I think that they're both bargains, both Deebo and Aiyuk. I know we're a second wide receiver show right now, so we're mostly talking about Aiyuk. But I just think that they're both keeping each other's values down. And I like that. We always say, and you look at those clusters of wide receivers, the Julio and Calvin Ridley, it was which one do you take a stab on those 2? It's the Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs argument a couple of years ago. Which one of those 2 do you take? And they were keeping each other around the same draft capital because you were interested in that offense. You just didn't know which one to take. And I think that that's going to be how it's going to be here. And we know that if you pick the right one, it's a huge, huge payoff. And so that's what you're going to have to decipher for yourself which argument you kind of like more and you want to take a gamble on. But I think Brandon Aiyuk, talent-wise, very, very, very good wide receiver.
Oh, yeah, super exciting to watch. One of the most exciting plays last year was him leapfrogging over that Eagles defender on that play. Just want to thank everybody that's in here on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. Please hit us with a like, hit us with a follow if you can on whatever platform, and comment your favorite second-year wide receiver that's coming in and some of the reasons why you like that guy coming into this year. We're going to continue on here. Johnny is going to take care of breaking down a little bit of Laviska Shenault's year. Obviously, it wasn't one to brag home about, but Laviska Shenault is a guy that's exciting at a prospect level. And then the Jaguars have some excitement building around their squad this year, Johnny.
Yeah, Laviska Shenault, very disappointing first year, right? He only saw 79 targets. He only had 15.3% target share. He did only see 66.1%, or excuse me, he saw 66.1% of the snap share, which isn't a significant amount comparing, some of these second year wide receivers who did see a lot more time. But the nice thing is that he saw 111 snaps from the slot. Once again, we like those slot wide receivers, especially if they're talented. We do know that, Trevor Lawrence should be the quarterback, or he will be the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars this next year. That should be an upgrade. I was very, very intrigued by Laviska Shenault when there were the rumors that DJ Chark could be traded, and that would have opened the door, I felt, for Laviskus to move outside. But with them bringing in Marvin Jones, I do understand why Laviska Shenault's draft capital is a bit lower. Do I think there'll be weeks where you'll be able to play him? I do, because he's very, very talented. I just think with the weapons that they have right now with DJ Chark there, Marvin Jones, and Laviska, I just think that it's going to be a little bit rougher season than we were hoping for.
It's almost like a redo of his rookie year, I would think, right? We're going to have to see how this plays out. I think I'm holding on in dynasty leagues. I'm not selling him for less than I got him. I think you obviously already kind of got him at a discount based on him going to Jacksonville, based on him being kind of injury prone in college. But I think Laviska Shenault in a spread system that Urban Meyer runs, 2-3 years down the line, is going to be really good, especially depending on if this team is going to move on from DJ Chark. They talked about it a little bit in this offseason. Maybe they trade him away. Laviska Shenault is a guy that's very interesting and going right now, Johnny, in our last PPR mock, 10th round. So we love that value. I mean, this is a guy that's going. Would we be surprised if by the end of the year in the new offense if he's the alpha of this offense?
I wouldn't actually, because like you said, I think that there is a potential that they do weed Chark out a little bit. There's a lot of reports that I'm reading that they're not planning on re-signing Chark because they do have confidence in
to
Laviska.
That point, Johnny, like you're getting guys, Jamison Crowder, Marvin Jones, Michael Gallup in that same area. I don't think any of those guys have a shot to be their team's number one at the end of the year. And I think Laviska's got the upside. So he's definitely a guy I'm targeting in those later rounds. You want to take all upside in those lottery ticket rounds, those upside picks. Speaking of a guy with a lot of upside, Johnny, let's talk a little bit about Chase Claypool. This was a guy who burst onto the scene, was the highest waiver wire ad, and one of the highest waiver wire ads that we had, and scored 11 touchdowns, Johnny. That was amazing. 9 receiving, 2 rushing, 15.3% touchdown rate. That was 5th in the league. Saw 109 targets in 2020, 25% of the target rate in Pittsburgh, 3rd in deep ball targets with 31 in the NFL. You look at Ben Roethlisberger was 3rd in deep ball attempts in 2020 with 78. But he ranked 31st in deep ball completion, Johnny, 27%. So this is a maddening thing, because if we could have got Ben with Claypool, and we saw flashes of it in this year, but if we could have got Ben with Claypool 3 years ago, this would be AB style production almost, you'd be thinking, just because of the way he can get the ball down the field and the way Claypool can go up and get it. So Mapletron, as they call him, how are you really thinking you'll go forward with him this year? He's actually been, you talked at the top that you've been kind of coming around on his ADP and where he's going.
Yeah, I actually, when I first started to, we started breaking these guys down, and I started doing some research, and I was off of the Chase Claypool bandwagon just for the fact that I was a little bit more intrigued by Deontay Johnson. And then with Juju coming back, we know with Big Ben's arm, that situation. But I will say that all of that stuff has caused Chase Claypool's draft stock to plummet. And yes, you talked about the 15.3% touchdown rate, which should significantly come down. I agree. The average will probably be right around like 8 to 9% for a big wide receiver like Claypool. Here's the thing that I do like about Claypool, right? Like, I'm more intrigued by Claypool. Like, if I had to rank them, it was receiver upside. So the 15 points and above is like an elite wide receiver production for a week. Chase Claypool, he gave you that same amount And yes, there were a lot of times where he disappointed and you weren't sure whether or not to play him. But again, you're able to get him as a wide receiver 4, a wide receiver 5 on your team on these drafts, and his upside is winning a week. We saw that upside because he scored 48 points in a week. I'm not saying he's going to do that again. The Tyler Lockett once a week, once a year, whatever he pops off. But I'm just saying that for the value that you're drafting him at, I think the upside is as good as anybody in that round. I mean, you're talking about these guys that you're going around, Laviska Shenault, the Marvin Joneses, the Michael Gallups. Like, those guys don't have as high of a ceiling to me as Chase Claypool. So I actually do like Chase Claypool for where he's going.
I love that breakdown about just the upside alone. Like, we could pass on guys often for their counterparts in their team because the counterpart has the upside that he doesn't have. So use the pick earlier on for a more stable, less convoluted, maybe backfield or wide receiving core, as in Juju. Let's say you pass on Juju, you take Claypool later, and what value were you able to get by passing on Juju up above with a shot at getting a league or a week winner in Claypool, as you just said? I think that's excellent. Want to shout out Rob Shorter, who's in here, says, "What's up, Whisper Nation? What's up, Rob, from across the pond over in England? We appreciate you being in here." All right, our next wide receiver, Johnny, we're going to talk about is Michael Pittman. So we're kind of getting into the real, no offense, but the real crappy part of this. Just because these guys didn't have great rookie years doesn't mean they won't have good sophomore years.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about them, but these are some guys, and I know Darius wants to hear about. He says, thoughts on Gabe Davis. I was high on him when Brown left, but now Manny Sanders is in town. So, yeah, I think Gabriel Davis will be interesting to watch. If he's a hold in Dynasty for me, he's definitely a guy you want to see, kind of similar to like Slayton, where Slayton had a good rookie year, and then you wanted to see what Slayton could do the next year.
Yeah,
I think you want to see what happens with Gabe Davis, but he's not somebody, and I don't mind you going to trade for him if it's later round picks, but like, it's not a guy I'm really actively going out to go get right now. We'll see how that plays out. But Michael Pittman, that's who we're talking about next, Johnny. So he had 61 targets, caught 40 of them for 503 yards and only 1 touchdown. No game did he see last year get over 9 targets, only eclipsed 100 yards the one time, and only scored a touchdown the one time as well. 2 games over 10 points in fantasy scoring this year, so last year, not very good. Only 9 games, in 9 games of his year last year, he got 3 or fewer catches. We will want to monitor his connection with Wentz, but there's not a lot of promise here, Johnny. I'm not seeing a lot in this connection here that screams I need to go be investing in Pittman. And there's just other guys with more upside, I'm feeling, than Pittman right now. Unless I hear something else, unless you have something else here that's groundbreaking, Pittman's not a guy I'm actively targeting. Especially, we're going to see Paris Campbell likely come back into this offense. T.Y. Hilton was able to come back. They've got the tight ends working. How are you feeling about Pittman?
I mean, we've seen Carson Wentz really, if he latches onto a wide receiver, he definitely can make them fantasy relevant. I do like Michael Pittman. I liked him coming out of college, and I liked his background. He's a big alpha wide receiver. You talk about those kind of bulldog wide receivers, the Anquan Bolden type. That's Michael Pittman, and I think that if him and Carson Wentz get on the same page, then you could be looking at a very, very, very interesting situation. The Paris Campbell thing is interesting to me. I've always liked Paris Campbell, but he can't seem to stay healthy. And then them bringing back T.Y. Hilton, like you said. But I just project Michael Pittman more as the X wide receiver here. And so, his draft capital is okay, but like you said, what is his true upside? Like, is his true upside a wide receiver 1? I don't think so. I think that maybe he could finish as, maybe as a ceiling would be like wide receiver 18. I would feel like, like something like that, wide receiver 20. So like you said, if there are other guys that I would probably more so prefer to take the dice roll on in these rounds. But if you do draft Michael Pittman, I think there are some things that you can kind of hang your hat on. It's not all doom and gloom, but it's definitely like you have to wait and see for sure.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a theme for a lot of these guys we're going to talk about, close out this show. Rob Shorter coming in asking, have you guys discussed DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson with Sam Darnold there now? So this is a good opportunity to let you guys know if you're not supporting the show on Patreon, you can. You can get over to patreon.com/the Fantasy Whispers, and we are putting out a Fantasy Take 5 every week. That's 5 topics that we go in depth on. One of the topics from this week was Sam Darnold and the offense and what we think could happen there. And Johnny's been all over Twitter talking about Sam Darnold this week as well. Yeah. So make sure you guys are following us on all platforms. And please, if you guys want to continue to help us support our dream and really get this thing going and go to the moon, so to speak, then hit us up on Patreon, search the Fantasy Whispers, and help us out there. But appreciate you guys all in here. We're going to move on to Denzel Mims, Johnny. The story with Mims is really that he was hobbled with injury, missing 6 games with hamstring issues last year, was vastly inconsistent. He never got over 75 receiving yards in any game, no game over 8 targets. 5 of his 9 games played saw him catch 4 or fewer balls, never reached even 9 points in half-point PPR. So that's what's been bad on the surface with Denzel Mims. We know that the production wasn't there, but there's a lot of change going on with the Jets. Do I still think they're probably the Jets this year? Yes. Can I see a future with Denzel Mims and Dynasty down the line? Sure. Presumably Zach Wilson is coming to town. You've got a fully healthy offseason. Let's hope for Denzel Mims. No more Adam Gase. That's probably Johnny's favorite part to talk about here with Denzel Mims. He is an interesting late round flyer. I find myself in mocks that we've done lately going for a guy like Jalen Reagor, who we'll talk about next, Henry Ruggs, who we'll definitely talk about down the line. I would even probably say Pittman's more interesting to me just based on the team. And then, of course, Chase Claypool, who was before that, has a lot more upside in my mind than Denzel Mims. So for me, not my cup of tea, but if you're looking for a guy who's got a shot to be the number one with a new young quarterback in the system, I could get there as a late round flyer on Denzel Mims.
Yeah, I mean, the talent is definitely there, right? He was one of the top wide receivers coming out last year. There were a lot of rumors that, last year he was supposed to be a sneaky pick. Like you said, I could be persuaded into taking him. I will probably be taking him in a couple of leagues as late round dart throws because I do see the upside. But again, it's going to be probably a little bit inconsistent because he's got Zach Wilson as his quarterback, presumably. And then you also talked to the Corey Davis. He is a big wide receiver, and there could be something there with Zach Wilson and him. So it would be more of a wait and see. But he's definitely going to be a guy that I will have a couple shares of, and I will be watching in preseason and listening to what the beat reporters are saying because the talent is definitely there.
Talent is definitely there for a man named Jalen Reagor, who is our next wide receiver. Johnny, talk to us a little bit about Jalen Reagor because the Eagles, Philadelphia gave the Eagles a lot of crap for drafting him, and he didn't really pan out to be the guy, but a lot of vacated targets are coming off the field for Philly. They're changing over the quarterback. They're changing over the offensive system. Is there some shining, shimmering hope here for Jalen Reagor?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to remind our Eagles fans of this or anything, but I could say it because my Cardinals did something very, 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 very similar, and that they took Reagor over Justin Jefferson, and that ended up being not the right move. I will say, but you look at what Jalen Reagor is, and when they drafted him, they kind of had an idea that he could potentially be number one wide receiver. He is not an alpha wide receiver. We can definitely see that after his first year. Now, he did play through a plethora of injuries. He seemed to, try to, work through some of this stuff. He had like his injured hand and things like that. So he only did see 54 targets last year. That averaged to 4.9 targets per game. Not that great. He did only play in 11 of those games. And during that time, he only scored 1 touchdown. He also only saw 14.4% target market share. Once again, that's a far cry from what a alpha wide receiver should draw. You should see them drawing anywhere from, typically 24 to 28% is what we'd like to see. Here's where it gets interesting, Travis, and why I do still want to have Jalen Reagor as a couple of my dart throws for next year, and I'll be taking him. I've taken him in mock drafts. I'll continue to take him in mock drafts, and that is because he saw 15 deep targets. Now, we knew that was the thing coming in, was like, oh, he's going to be the deep ball guy because he's fast. He can get behind the defense. He only saw 15, which seems pretty low for his rookie year. So that's like, I don't know, like why you're bringing that up. Well, it's because that accounted for, when you take that and look at his targets, Travis, that accounted for 28% of his routes ran were deep targets. So you're saying that is tremendous upside when you're getting deep targets. And then you look at what Jalen Hurts, what he did his rookie year, 41.2% deep ball completion percentage, Travis, as a rookie. We talked about how we've seen this in other rookies where they had a terrible deep ball completion percentage in their first rookie year, and they significantly improved that by like 10%. Well, Jalen Reagor, Hurts is already a pretty accurate deep ball thrower. And so you get a full off season with Jalen Reagor and Hurts on the same page. And you talk about where he's going in drafts. I think that there's tremendous upside because Reagor will be able to win you weeks, similar to what Deshaun Jackson did back in his heyday. It's like these home run hitters that only need, one long bomb, and all of a sudden they got 15, 16 fantasy points, make your day. And that's going to be obviously more matchup based, but pay attention. Follow us. We'll be telling you when to play him, but he's definitely a guy that you're going to want to have some shares of this season.
Plus, they've got the same name narrative. Jalen Hurts, Jalen Reagor,
exactly.
Like that's going to be that. They're destined to throw the ball to each other.
Yep.
It's an ego.
It's thing. Science, dude.
Yeah,
science.
Exactly. Well, a little bit of weird science was happening with the Raiders because even though it was John Gruden who was, and John Gruden and Mike Mayock drafting basically last year, they still did very Raider things and drafted the fastest wide receiver in the NFL draft in Henry Ruggs. He was the first wide receiver off the board, and he had a forgetful rookie season. It didn't matter where he was drafted or how fast he was. He played in 13 games, 43 targets, only 26 catches, 452 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had no game over 5 targets, no game over 3 catches. He had only one single 100-yard game, and 59 of those yards came on one play. I mean, that is what he was going to be typecasted as the big play guy. That's what people were going to knock on him about. But I'm a little concerned because we saw that last year he was a one-trick pony, and they brought in John Brown this year. So I'm hoping that actually means that Henry Ruggs will be used more creatively around the field, and they'll use him as a number one guy as they bragged they were going to, a guy that could be used in the slot or X or Y wide receiver, whatever they wanted to do. I think he's a fun flyer. He has a ton of upside just based on speed and down the field play alone, and targets up for grabs in this offense. If this offense can make a push towards being a better pass-friendly offense, then Ruggs will be one of the guys who benefits the most because of the draft pedigree that he has. And we've seen in the past where Gruden will use one wide receiver to funnel his offense through with some complementary pieces. So for me, Ruggs has a ton of upside, but it's based purely on upside alone. And you're definitely glad he's going where he's going because you wouldn't want to have to pay much more than a late round pick for a guy like him.
Travis, I got some bad news.
Yeah.
I want to throw. So it's a great segue because Darius, once again, he's like our hype man right now and our segue man because he's doing a good job. He said, I'm a huge fan of Bryan Edwards. I think that Las Vegas will scheme for him more. Ruggs isn't the man. And I know that you're over here hoping and wishing and dreaming and wishing because that's all the people are going to be doing who draft Henry Ruggs this year. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be the guy. I think that was a clear indication when they brought in John Brown because John Brown runs the same routes as Henry Ruggs plays. Here's the other thing. The guy that I'm with Darius 100%. Bryan Edwards is the guy that I'm absolutely in love with as far as a sleeper goes this year. You can get him practically for free. I love getting him in every single draft or mock draft that I can. He only played in 9 games his rookie season, so he didn't do anything. He never saw more than 3 targets in a game. They added John Brown, though, which is why it's a huge importance and a piece of the puzzle that we need to talk about, because Nelson Aguilar goes to New England. So what does that mean, right? Well, it means that Nelson Aguilar, when you look at what he was doing last year, he was running the same route tree as Bryan Edwards. So that's why Bryan Edwards didn't get on he got injured, right, at the beginning of the season. And then that's why, and then Nelson Aguilar started running those routes and he did a good job. So then they didn't, need to bring Bryan Edwards back and have that role. He played a slightly different role. And so now you're looking at Nelson Aguilar. What did he do? He's leaving 82 vacated targets. And now who do I expect to take that role? Bryan Edwards, because that's what they drafted him. We have to remember that coming out, he had the earliest breakout age of any player on Player Profiler. He did at 18 years old, and he was a top 5 prospect coming into the NFL on a loaded wide receiver class. I mean, we're spending like a whole entire hour talking about just these second-year wide receivers. And he's one of the last ones I bring up, but yeah, he was a top 5 prospect then. And so you look at the talent is there. He just didn't get the opportunities year one. And now they moved those wide receivers to a position where it looks like he should get the targets. And like Travis said, we see John Gruden oftentimes run through one wide receiver, and it's just now gambling on what that wide receiver is, it is.
The good news is you don't have to pay anything for either at this point in the ADP. At this point, you could get Henry Ruggs in the 13th, and oftentimes Bryan Edwards isn't even drafted in our mocks. We'll see where that ends up going.
Travesty. We need to change that, Whisper Nation. I'm telling you right now.
Well, I think it'll be an interesting case study to understand who we probably would go with. I think Edwards is a fine specimen to maybe be like a possession wide receiver. I don't know if he's ever going to be I don't know if he has the ceiling Henry Ruggs has.
Oh, he's an alpha. I'll tell you, he's an alpha.
We'll see. Like you were saying that last year, and it never equated to much. And I just
told you why.
Yeah, excuses are excuses, Johnny, but it didn't happen, man. So we'll see if it happens, and we'll. Like I said, the good news for Whisper Nation is you don't have to pay much for either guy, and you could just hang your hat on either Johnny's guy in Edwards or a guy I think I'm going to take a shot on in Henry Ruggs. Sorry about that. Can't even remember his name. That's how much I love him.
Wow. Yeah.
Cat's Pajamas coming in here. I usually target rookie wide receivers, but last year's rookie wide receiver class was so good, it's pushing up the early ADP of the rookies this season, so I'm out on the top rookie wide receivers. Now, this is an interesting study. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of things change once these rookies get a team, and once we know where they're going, hopefully they will settle into where their ADP is. I think what you're seeing now is that ADP is high because people are excited about the prospect. And we were probably going to see some things shake out once these guys actually get landing spots. If they're behind another guy, like let's say Jamar Chase goes to Cincinnati, and then we have to have the discussion of Higgins versus Chase and what that looks like for the ADP for both guys. So I think that's got to be playing here.
I think people just get high. Like I truly don't think people really understand when they're taking these guys, like what that actually means, right? Like, we talked about like CeeDee Lamb coming off the board as a wide receiver 27. Like CeeDee Lamb is coming off as the wide receiver 27, who we had just, talked about how an awesome season that he already had. Like he already did that. And then people are coming up with Jamar Chase in this. And then we got Devonta Smith. And like people are like, oh, but look at what these, the best wide receivers in that class did. And so like we're going to take them even above them, which is insane. Like you're taking a guy who doesn't have a team, doesn't have any production in the NFL, and you're taking him over guys that are second-year wide receivers. Like Cat's Pajamas said right now, like I'm out on a lot of these top wide receiver rookies because they're people are like literally jumping head over feet to draft them, and it's like, all right, you do you, boo, because I'll take these second-year wide receivers, and I'll be very happy with them.
Travis Garden coming in here. I think he's talking about Bryan Edwards. We were just discussing. He says not even listed on Sleeper. He is on Sleeper. He does spell it Brian with a Y. So make sure you're typing that in. That might be why you're not seeing it there. But he's definitely on Sleeper. But he's definitely not in the. He hasn't been in a lot of our drafts. He's been kind of an undrafted guy here. Darius Rice. Trav isn't listening, Johnny. Look, that's the story of how I get through these podcasts. At some point, it's like Johnny's my work wife, so I have to have some selective hearing when I have a conversation with Johnny, because if I can block him out a little bit, I stay sane and I'm able to keep going with this show.
Which is why, 20 episodes later, you're going to hear Big Travie come on the show and be like, oh, Bryan Edwards is my guy, dude. I'm all on him, dude. And then
some of us are the talent. Some of us are the talent and the good looks of the operation, and others are the brains and keep the show running. So, look, we're a good team. But there, I don't listen or watch the credits. You know this.
Yeah, we know this. Yeah.
All right. Our last wide receiver before we get to those closing credits for the day is Van Jefferson. This is a guy that gets a lot of excitement out here in the Los Angeles area. He has NFL pedigree. His dad played in the league. He was on Hard Knocks last year as a big star there, but he had a really weak rookie campaign. 31 targets, 19 receptions, 220 yards, and a touchdown. Wasn't startable in any game last year. Look, he's only on this list really because Johnny put him on here. I didn't have a lot to talk about for Jefferson. But no. But to be fair, Jefferson will see Josh Reynolds walk out the door. And with Josh Reynolds' 81 targets from 2020, that's 15% of the target market share. We're talking about one of the best throwers of the football in the league coming to town, and Matt Stafford. If you absorb all those targets, the 15% that Reynolds took with him to Tennessee, then you're looking at Jefferson getting, if he gets them all, 20% of a target market share here in this. Now, I don't think he'll probably end up all the way there, but we could see something like 17 to 18% target market share. And then we're talking about these late round guys, especially in deep leagues where you're playing 3 wide receivers. Bryan Edwards is an interesting look. Van Jefferson's an interesting look. Michael Pittman, who we talked about, very interesting. Some guys that are moving around here. And Jefferson in this offense could definitely fill a role, as a guy that can play a lot of different positions for the Rams as far as wide receiver is concerned.
Look, I get it. It's not, when you're talking about Jeffersons, it's usually Justin Jefferson that you're talking about. But I am telling Whisper Nation right now, just like I was trying to tell, like a little bit as Big Travie is a little bitter because I scooped in on Dynasty and I took Van Jefferson before he could understand who Van Jefferson was, and it's okay. But I'm telling you right now, I don't even listen to what I'm saying, Whisper Nation. Go do a little research for yourself and just look up what the actual Rams offensive coordinators are saying about this guy. They're comparing him to Keenan Allen. They're saying he's a combo of both Cooper Kupp and Bobby Trees. I'm not saying it. They're saying it. So believe in what they're saying. If you don't believe me, I'm just saying Van Jefferson is free at the end of drafts, and he's a guy that now that we have Matthew Stafford, an actual very competent quarterback that could get the ball down the field, I'm just saying you could do worse with those later round picks than potentially taking a guy like Van Jefferson. I would almost say I don't want to do my Charles Barkley guarantee. But like I'm gonna like pretty close to saying that Van Jefferson, maybe not this next year, but in the next couple of years, Van Jefferson will be a guy.
Maybe not the year after.
No,
maybe not even in the NFL. Maybe
2 years
in the CFL.
Give Van Jefferson 2 years. Give Van Jefferson 2 years, and I guarantee he's going to be a name. But he could be a name this year, which is why you want to get him.
You're pulling the Chris Collinsworth. Here's a guy that in a couple of years is going to be the best wide receiver.
4.39 40-yard dash, Travis. So he's really fast. 95th percentile. Okay,
3.14. That's the number for pie. Okay, and I want some pie right now. And that's about as much as it has to do with fantasy football as anything else. Okay, so
I'm just saying he now has a quarterback that would know how to get him the ball in the right place. And he's talented.
There's definitely excitement in this offense, and Van Jefferson could be a huge benefactor for that. I think it's more likely, in my opinion, to go to a guy like Tyler Higbee and maybe Cam Akers out of the backfield than it is to go to a Van Jefferson as a third option. But I think that, should something happen to a Kupp or a Robert Woods, this is a guy that slots right in as that next guy up and has all the chops to get it done there. But Whisper Nation, we want to know what you think on any platform we're on right now. We just went through all these wide receivers, these second-year wide receivers. Johnny, I want you to quickly grade or rank 5 of these wide receivers, and we'll have Whisper Nation put their top 5 of the second-year guys we talked about today as well in the comments. But Johnny, give them your top 5 quickly on the second-year wide receivers.
My top 5 are CeeDee Lamb number 1, Justin Jefferson number 2, which might draw a little bit of hate, but that's what I've got. I have T. Higgins 3, I have Brandon Aiyuk 4, and then I have Chase Claypool 5. So those are my top 5. And then I feel like any of the other wide receivers, Travis, beyond that are kind of your gambling. There is upside, but those are my top 5 that I would prefer to have going into season 2021.
And we'll, of course, start putting out more of our rankings and more precise rankings that'll include not just the second-year guys, but every wide receiver as well. So make sure you're following us on all social media platforms to get us over there. Final thought I just wanted to take today here and say rest in power to DMX, who passed away. I just remember so many of his songs. Me and Johnny were jamming to him pre-show here to just trying to remember him. And DMX was a real one. We were appreciative of his music and the universe, the world lost a very special human being when DMX passed. So with that, Whisper Nation, we appreciate you jumping in here. For Johnny Game Time Hicks, I'm Big Travie. We are the Fantasy Whispers, and we're out. Peace.
Peace.